Let me ask you this. What is the healthiest meal you know how to cook? Picture that. Is that tasty? Is that easy to prepare? Well, I think this is even easier, and this is also one of the oldest cooking methods. If I knew how to make this when I started eating clean, I would have saved so much time. This, by the way, is the cooking method used by our ancestors. As soon as we were able to make pots and boil things in it, we never stopped using this extraordinary method. And what I will reveal you today, if you watch the whole video, is the modern revisitation of this unbelievably simple method. In the first chapter, we will quickly go over what this is all about, but make sure you watch all the video, because in the final chapter, I will give you the framework to achieve this meal in all its variables. So no, I'm not gonna give you a recipe, but something better. So basically, take any vegetable, in this case I used those 5, and then take a piece of meat, okay? Preferably with a bone in. And stop. Here comes already the first unconventional advice of the video. Now you can basically decide to add anything you want, and I mean everything. You want to add potatoes, nuts, add some nuts, fruits. If you want, you can add fruits, okay? Literally anything. Like if you were in a video game, okay? Now the conventional facts will say like, oh, but you don't put nuts and fruits. Like, no one does this. You don't put them here. And this will probably like alter the original recipe flavor balance or some shit, okay? Shut up. Shut up, completely ignore them. Listen to me, there is no such a thing as original flavor. This is something that is made up by people in culture and has nothing to do with the satisfaction that comes from food. You may prefer the traditional recipe because you grew up with it, but this does not mean that it is universally the best version. People in Sardinia eat rotten cheese with worms in it. Do I like it? Hell no. Fucking no. No, I don't like it. Do they like it? Yes. So I must be right and they must be wrong. No, obviously. Okay, now picture or imagine your country traditional recipe, like the typical dish of your country. Now put pineapple on it. Would you like it? Probably not, and that's fine. You grew up linking that specific image of the food to a specific taste, and if that is like altered, if you taste a different thing than you expected, your brain will automatically think it is like rotten or spoiled. And in my case, it is pizza. Like if you put something strange in it, I will notice it, because I've always eaten pizza in a certain way. You know, like it happens to me when I'm eating maybe some hazelnuts, but then there is like this one that is strangely soft and has a twisted taste. You spit it out and you realize that it is rotten. You had an expectation of what an hazelnut tasted like, but that one didn't live up to it, and that was a good call. But in our case, we just added a different ingredient, so yeah, it's nothing rotten, it is fine. So for example, in this case, the quote-unquote original recipe, which, I mean, there are many recipes depending on the country. Like in my country, in Italy, we use celery, carrots, onions, garlic, and yeah, that's called bollito, which is like boiled. So for example, in this case, the quote-unquote recipe required me to use garlic, okay, like fresh garlic. In this footage, I didn't have the patience, so I forgot about it. I didn't peel it, I didn't put it in. And guess what? It was still delicious. Do you think our ancestors cared if they didn't have some ingredients? No, obviously. They will just throw everything they gathered throughout the day inside the pot and boil that. Alright, so what you have to do is take these ingredients, cover them with water and cook them until they are very, very soft. And in this case, for example, I had a lot of meat and I was not able to fit that much water into the pot. And this resulted in a very like strong and flavorful broth. And like, is that a bad thing? Well, according to my mom, yes. According to me, no. I liked the strong broth better. And this is the thing, you have to adapt to your own environment. Don't take this footage as a reference for the proportions. Instead, skip to the last chapter if you want to have an idea on how to make this. Like, if I could go back in time, I would add more vegetables. It was not sweet enough for me. So once you placed all of the ingredients in a pot and you covered it with water, like fill it up completely. In the footage, I didn't cover it fully, but I advise you to do, like, to cover it. Like, I had a small pot, I didn't have anything bigger. If you have something bigger, like, make sure you cover all of the ingredients and even more, like, as far as you can go is better. Yeah, and simply cover it with a lid so that the steam does not escape, otherwise it will like concentrate and we don't want that. And yeah, that's it, like wait for 3 hours. Should be good. Honestly, you cannot go wrong with time, because again, this is like the easiest fucking method. You can wait 3 hours or 2 hours, you can wait 5 hours, 8 hours. It's not gonna change much. Honestly, I like it when it's very, very tender, so I will leave it for as much as it takes for the meat to get soft. Now, once you think that it's cooked enough, you can like take all of the meat and the vegetables and put them aside, and you can store the broth if you want. Well, not if you want, like you want to store the broth. Or you can keep everything in the pot and put it in the fridge, obviously when it is cooled down. And yeah, this will last you, like I had food for like 3 days straight. Like you can cook this, this fucking meal prep, bro. Like you can cook this one day, and the meat and the vegetables, which are like so fucking nutritious, like the broth, okay, the broth that basically took all the collagen from the meat, from the bone. Like the bone has a lot of collagen, and that's why if you store the broth in the fridge, it will make a gelatin, like it will like gelatinize. Then obviously if you want to use the broth, you take it out of the fridge and you heat it up and it becomes broth. One thing I didn't mention was that you have to add salt, obviously. Like salt is very important, don't forget about salt. Add salt, yeah, and then you can add literally any spice you want. You can, if you like, depending on where you're from, because for example in my country we don't add anything special. I added, because I like it, you know, the powdered garlic, okay? Since I didn't add fresh garlic, I decided to add the dried one. But yeah, like feel free, like do whatever you want. Okay, so now it's time for the framework. Why am I giving you a framework? What the fuck even is this? And why not a recipe? Well, because a recipe, in my opinion, is way too limiting. I would like to give you the possibility to shape this recipe as much as you want. I don't like the constraints that come with a recipe. So I will go over the general rule, the ingredients, the timings and temperatures, the proportions, and the cutting size. I will have to find a better way to explain this stuff. I'm still not satisfied with the method I'm using to tell you this stuff, so I will have to find another way. But for now, let's go with this. So, the rule. For this meal, you have to boiling things down to the core. Literally, you have to boil things together in a big pot. That's it. Now, the ingredients. So I will only ask you to use 3 ingredients. Then all the rest is literally like optional. So any vegetable, literally any vegetable you can think of, any vegetable, any cut of meat, literally any muscle meat, okay? Whether it's pig, it's chicken, it's beef, anything. And most importantly, salt. You cannot skip salt. So now the optional ingredients are a bone, literally like a piece of bone that will help release the collagen and the other like umami stuff. You like bone broth, okay? Now potatoes is something you can add. Then we have olive oil, and then we have spices. You choose the spice. It can be turmeric, ginger, paprika, pepper. And then for the final optional ingredient, you have anything you want, and this can be up to you, like literally anything. As I said before, nuts, fruits. Honestly, I've never tried fruits, but I don't think it will turn out bad. It can be a grain, it can be some leftover you have in the fridge, like anything. Now, timing and temperature. So as I said before, this is really easy of a meal to make, and even in the timings, it shows up. Basically, you can add everything together at the same time. So your meat, your vegetable, your salt, your bone, your spice, your oil, any ingredient you want. And you can cook that at low heat for about 3 hours minimum. Then you can go above. I usually go for 5 hours, because the meat gets really soft and I love that. But you know, go as much as you want. You have to decide when it is enough. You can pinch the meat every few hours to check if the meat is soft enough for you. Very important, you have to cover this with a lid. Otherwise, the steam will escape and the water will not be able to cook the ingredients. So here is another note. You can actually add potatoes at the same time as the other ingredients, but you have to make sure you are putting them like whole. If you want to include them already diced, you will need to add them like 30-20 minutes before everything else is cooked. Because what will happen if you join them at the same time is that maybe the potatoes will overcook and they will get very soft. Again, is it a bad thing? I explained this in the timing chapter I made in the video about like how much can you change recipes. Alright, time and temperature are done. Now the proportions. This is interesting. This is up to you. Actually, you can use 90% vegetable and 10% meat, as well as you can use 10% vegetable and 90% meat. This is completely up to you. In my opinion, it is better to include both of them, but you can go as far as just using meat. You know, that's called the meat broth, I think. Or you can use all vegetables, and that's called vegetable broth. These you will have to decide based on your preferences. Honestly, like the difference is quite minimal. So if you do it the first time, don't really stress about it. And the next time, try to change the amount of vegetable or meat and see the difference. Next time, pick the one you like the most. Okay, now for the cutting size. And again, this meal is so fucking easy to make that there is no precise chunk size, meaning you don't have to cut the meat in like small cubes, okay? Because as you saw in the video, I just literally like plotted everything in the pot without cutting it. It cooked anyway. This is the thing about this method. It's so crazy. You can it is like so convenient to make. You just put everything whole without cutting it, and that works, and that's why I love this meal. So yeah, if you want to cut things beforehand, you can, but that's purely for convenience, so you don't have to shred the meat later. But honestly, I like cooking the meat once it is like soft, because that's easier to cut. So yeah, you do you. But for the purpose of this video, I'll just ask you to don't care and to not pull out any cutting board and knife to cut everything. Don't do that. You don't need to. This is something I always wanted to do, like to make this kind of recipe that is not a recipe, but just a blueprint, like a framework to make a meal. I think this is way less overwhelming, and I kind of never seen this anywhere, so I'm glad I could like start this off. Hopefully this will help you. It would have helped me a lot when I started cooking, and even now. It would be really useful if everybody used this method to explain recipes. I think I will make a follow-up video showing you how I managed all of the meat I had, because as I said before, I had food for like 3 days. But yeah, I will just give you like a quick guide on how to manage all of this food. So usually, like at least what my mom taught me, is that you have to take all the meat and the vegetables out, and you can just eat them like they are. My advice here is you can like eat them with a little bit of yogurt, because the meat especially is quite bland. So yeah, like eat the meat and the vegetables together. They are really cozy to eat together, and yeah, maybe some yogurt for acidity. But yeah, like the broth, you can store it in glass jars or glass containers, and you can store them in the fridge. You can later use the broth to cook anything in it. And if you want, you can also add back some of the vegetables or the meat. I will leave in the description an image you can screenshot where I wrote down this framework, so you can make it easily without checking this video every time.